Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This afternoon, I'd like to give you an overview very briefly of the Games and actually put meaning to one of the words in the title of the conference, challenge. I'll describe LOCOG, the organization that I work for, because it's actually pertinent to how we source things, and then talk about my specific transport responsibilities, and finally mention some of the business opportunities that I'm sure you'll be interested in. The Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, and from now on I will just refer to both of those as the Games, have often been described as man's largest peacetime undertaking. And those statistics give you the reason why. The complexity and challenge of the Games comes out of three basic issues. The first is the scale. And the next couple of slides will also show not just the scale, but the geographical spread and the duration, all of which together and coupled with the security environment in which it takes place, makes it undoubtedly such a challenging logistical piece to pull off. To put it into context, this summer, the World Cup will take place in South Africa. There will be 32 countries who will have 23 footballers per team. At last count, my arithmetic tells me that is 736 competitors. Compare that to 10,600 athletes for the Olympic Games. Compare 32 countries to 205 countries. Sometimes some of the countries, the names that I come across, I can only look back and think that I used to come across them when I was a teenager collecting stamps, because they're actually some very, very small countries, but actually in the Olympic Games, they all come together, and less so, but quite a large number as well for the Paralympic Games. And the Paralympic Games, certainly in London, because the UK was really the founder of the Paralympic Games, is without doubt going to be the biggest ever. Some of the indications from our broadcasters already is saying that they expect to have at least 30% more people here than they had for Beijing. The last statistic of the warehousing, 1 million square feet of warehousing, is actually equivalent to something like 15 football pitches. And my colleagues involved in feeding the people in the Games tell me that about 1 million apples will be consumed during that period. That makes it big. Not only is it big, but it is also widespread across the UK. We have venues outside London, like the Dorney Lake at Eton College, where the rowing and sprint canoe events will take place, Weymouth for sailing, and of course, many of the very well-known football venues where the preliminaries of the football events will take place, with the semi-finals and finals coming back to Wembley. So it's big, it's widespread, and it is long. The Games aren't just the 16 days of competition of the Olympic Games and the 12 days of competition of the Paralympic Games. Operations for us will actually start a month before the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games on the 27th of June, when the media centre at Stratford opens, and the world's media will start coming in to set up to get ready for this major event. The athletes will start coming in when the Olympic Village opens, also at Stratford, and also with the other sub-villages that we have in Royal Holloway College and in Weymouth. And they will have a period of about 2 weeks to prepare. During that time, all the services will have to be up and running. We then follow that with the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, and 3 days after the opening ceremony, the Olympic Village closes, and by that time, all of the organizers and the participants will have left. 50% of them will leave on the day after the closing ceremony. Some 160 heads of state and government will attend those ceremonies. And generally speaking, it is considered that that will be the largest gathering of dignitaries outside the death of a ruling monarch. You can imagine the various challenges that that poses. We then start with the Paralympic Games, and in between, for those 2 weeks, the very hectic activity to transition some of the venues that are going to be used for both games. The Paralympic closing ceremony on the 9th of September, and then the Games operational periods coming to an end on the 12th of September. Now to LOCOG. LOCOG is a private sector company, limited by guarantee. We have an income and expenditure budget of about 2 billion, and that chart shows you the sources of that income. The largest part comes from our national sponsors, marketing partners, as we call them. Those are companies like Lloyds, BT, BMW, BP, particularly, who are very active in my sector. And it's amazing how we have been able to raise over £600 million through a period already when we've been through a recession as a nation. And that is testimony to the power of the Olympic brand. We also get a grant from the IOC through their broadcast revenues, and the other major proportions of our income comes out of the ticket sales, and the top partners, actually that stands for the Olympic partners, who are the worldwide partners of the IOC, and they have rights for the games right across the country, the world, not just the UK. Because it's a limited company by guarantee and in a private sector, LOCOG is not subject to OJEU rules when it comes to procurement, but nevertheless is a fully paid up, signed up and active member of Compete4 to ensure competitive and open and fair sourcing. And I come to my specific responsibilities as head of transport in LOCOG. LOCOG, as the organization responsible for staging the games and reports to the IOC about the planning and the welfare of the games, is there to ensure that all aspects of the games will work well. So LOCOG is interested in the transport services that are provided to all clients. However, specifically, LOCOG directly delivers transport services to those people who come to participate, organize, and steer the games. The athletes, the technical officials, press and broadcast, the marketing partners or sponsors, as I've mentioned, and the Olympic and Paralympic family, made up primarily of the IOC, its various affiliate organizations, and the sporting federations, just like FIFA, who come to either observe or actually regulate the games. We have a hierarchy of need in transport because actually at the heart of the games are the athletes. And therefore, number one priority for all the transport services is the athletes. We then move on in slightly decreasing degree of criticality and importance to the delegates who organize for the event to take place, the Olympic Broadcasting Service who manage the cameras that take this event to a global audience of over 4 billion people, and through whom a lot of the revenue then comes, the workforce also who have to be there to make the games happen. The right-holding broadcasters are those who take the signal from the TVs and cameras that the Olympic Broadcasting Service deliver, so like the BBC or the NBC, and add to that commentary to suit their own private audience. And then we have the National Olympic committees and federations and the marketing partners. Our services deliver bus and coach, fleet, and public transport services for these clients. The biggest item of expenditure in my area is the bus and coach procurement. This is the procurement of vehicles, of drivers, of depots, management, and also of conversion of the buses that are used during the Olympic Games to have more wheelchairs on for the Paralympic Games. The invitation to tender for that closed at the end of last March. We're very, very pleased with the response from the UK industry, over 91 companies offering in excess of 3,500 buses and coaches, about double the requirement that we have. So it's going to be quite a competitive tender evaluation exercise, and we're very, very pleased with that. The fuel and the cleaning of the buses is part of what our sponsor BP is responsible for. These bus-based systems are bespoke systems and will operate out of 3 temporary bus depots that are dedicated to the Games. There'll be one at West Ham, adjacent to the existing West Ham depot, which will be for the athletes, and TA is just a transport for the athletes. The piece of land just by the Newham Council, Royals Business Park, which is for the federations, the sporting judges and referees, and another site in Millennium Mills for the media. Now, those sites are being leased from the LDA and will be returned back to them because all of my transport operations are temporary. I now turn to fleet, and again, the procurement of the cars is completed. What we have yet to do is the procurement of the drivers. We will be receiving over 4,100 vehicles from BMW, who are our automotive sponsor. Most of them will be BMWs, not all. There will be some supplied from third-party manufacturers. And we and BMW have signed up to a sustainable fleet with an average emission across the fleet of less than 120 grams per kilometer, which is actually ahead of the European standard at 2013. Within that contract, we expect the provision of up to 200 electric vehicles and a number of bicycles and motorcycles as well. Again, the fuel will be provided by our partner BP. To manage the fleet, the fleet of cars, again, I will have 3 depots across London. The one at the top is in Westfield Complex in Stratford City, in an underground car park that again will be leased temporarily from Westfield. The one to the right will be at Excel, to your right will be at Excel, using the car parking facilities at Excel, which is one of our biggest venues. And the one to the left will be leasing from Westminster Council the underground car park at Marble Arch, which is ideally and strategically placed to serve the Olympic family guests, most of whom will be staying in hotels around that area, particularly in Park Lane. Part of my responsibility is also ensuring that when all of these vehicles, whether they be buses or cars, come into a venue, that we are responsible for ensuring that the right vehicles have access to the venue, that there are areas designated for them to set down and pick up their clients or to park. And I say that, and it kind of sounds quite simple, but for venues all over the country, and for the number of vehicles we're talking about, it is an amazingly complex and challenging exercise. So where are the opportunities? Many of them have been mentioned already, but particularly if you just think about the fact that I will have a team of over 15,000 people running the games, and they will all have to be trained. Every one of them will receive training in games orientation, understanding the peculiar environment and demands of the Olympic Games, including the protocols and the security environment in which we will operate. There will be general customer service skills training, and then there will be event transportation skills training, including things like understanding the very specific ways of accessing the venues that we will be operating. We will have some requirements for technology. Already we put out in Compete 4 a tender for some asset management systems for managing the 4,000 vehicles. Those 3 depots will require a basic amount of construction, particularly ensuring that the hard standing is fit for purpose for the heavy duty of vehicles that will be going over it. And then there will be a lot of overlay, a lot of tents, fences, lighting, all of the things that you would expect to see in a depot, including some mechanical handling equipment. Some of the items, like the tents and cones and barriers, are used by all the other departments in LOCOG, and therefore LOCOG will be sourcing them not just for transport, but for the entire games, the entire games requirement. To conclude, there are business opportunities within LOCOG's transport operation across a number of sectors. Just as has been mentioned earlier, all of our sourcing does go through Compete 4. We'll be sourcing many of the items, not just for transport, but for all the other parts of LOCOG. We've already done the bus and coach procurement, and we are evaluating the tenders. But in case you've missed out on that, please remember that when we announce those who have won the tenders in July, there will still be opportunities to subcontract to those organizations. The majority of the items other than the cars and the buses and coaches, which are either being procured or are under procurement, will happen during the period from about August till about June of next year. By June next year, we will expect to have basically signed contracts for everything that we require. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attention.